apart from the opposition and KANU animosity, there was also a near stalemate in the House, opposition leadership crisis. Ford Kenya and Ford Asili had equal number of members of parliament in the House. So between the late Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and Kenneth Njindo Matiba, who would become the leader of the official opposition?
So how this issue was resolved was that Matiba suddenly decided he would just be making technical appointments in parliament. So Ford Asili stopped sort of pushing to be the official leader of the opposition. I think the arguments had been, oh, Matiba got more votes, which is true. He got nearly 1.5 million votes. Jaramogi had got 1 million votes. So strictly speaking, if he had pushed that argument, he probably would, Ford Asili would have been the official opposition. But the issue was then other alternatives were being suggested. That it doesn't matter. This is not an issue of the presidential votes cast. It's a question of how many members of parliament do you have. And I think at one time it was being suggested that we revolve. This year it's for Kenya, this year is for Asili. But before all that could sort of crystallize and resolve itself, Matiba decided he didn't want to take part in the proceedings in parliament, so he couldn't become leader of the official opposition, so naturally Ford Kenya took it up.
The very House had also two other unique features. Its membership comprised of leaders who served in the independent parliament, who included Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Martin Shikuku, Gigi Kariuki, George Ndenge, Kassim Mwamuzandi, among others, who were again part of this new parliament that had ushered in a new dawn of multi-party politics.
Members who came to parliament, who were in the independence parliament and before, had outstanding differences, or you could differentiate them clearly from the members that came in 1993. The first thing is that the members who were in the fight for independence, the new parliament at independence, were people who respected the institution of parliament. The second thing is that they respected one another. They may disagree with a fellow parliamentarian on a matter of principle, but they respected one another. They addressed each other with honor, and they debated with dignity. The third attribute they had, which is totally lacking today, was debating issues rather than events and personalities.
In their heydays were firebrands, just like us. A person like Martin Shikuku, a person like William Ntimama, and occasionally their fire would come to the fore. Martin Shikuku, the late, was a member of the opposition, was a member of the activists within parliament who were rooting for plural politics, even as we rooted for plural politics outside parliament. I would say that the Honorable Martin Shikuku, now late, never lost his fire. He died a firebrand, just like he was. And it was easy working with them, notwithstanding the age difference. There were those, obviously, whose ideas and ours would never match.
According to Kaparo, there was a clear distinction between the old guards and the firebrand young Turks.
They used very outrageous language. They were, to say the least, not so used to good behavior and etiquette, and also full rules as they were. They were a product of protest. They were activists. and their behavior was that of activism. And activism and orderly conduct do not sit together.
There was a very good blend, I must say. I remember those days, people like Wamala Kijana, people like Mwai Kibaki, when they stood to speak from the opposition benches, even those on the government benches who didn't like what they were saying could not help admiring what they were saying. I could recall Mwai Kibaki at the time as a shadow spokesman on economy and budget, could stand up for 2 hours without reference to any material and walk through the budget and simplify it and dismiss it and walk away. And for us who are new in the House, were very excited to see this kind of approach. Martin Shikuku, who was then the de facto leader of Fodasili, then we didn't have a cap on how long members could speak in the House. I could recall Martin Shikuku addressing Parliament for a week on his own. Every day after statements, he goes on with a bill, and you could never find him repeating himself, and you could always find a delight listening to him. So it was a learning curve for many of us, even those who are showing bravado in terms of vibrant opposition, youthful politics like Mohisa, Kitui, Mother Karua, and so on, Keraitu, always sat to listen when the likes of Shikuku, Kibaki, or Wamala Kijana were speaking, because there was some experience to pick from them.
It is in that 7th Parliament that for the first time, the country witnessed relatives elected as members of Parliament. We had a father and a son in the House. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was MP for Bondo in Central Nyanza, while his son Raila Amolo Odinga was Langata MP in the capital, Nairobi. Martin Shikuku was MP for Butere on Fodasili ticket in Western Kenya, while his younger brother Luale Oyondi was a KANU MP in Nakuru town. Later, Dr. Oburu Oginga would join his younger brother Raila Odinga in the House after winning the Bondo parliamentary by-election following the demise of their father Jaramogi. The highlight of the 7th Parliament divide was in June 1997, when the opposition disrupted budget presentation as the opposition demanded constitutional reforms.
I remember how a few members of the opposition, namely Mohisa Kitui, James Orengo, Anyang' Nyong'o, Kiraitu Murungi, Mwai Kibaki, Mother Karua, and a few others, Raila Odinga, were able to keep the government on its toes throughout, including at one point the inability by the government to present the budget statement.
When we sat down, and amidst great hostility outside of Parliament between opposition and government, and a sitting at Tufungamano House where civil society and the opposition was threatening no reform, no elections, and it looked like we were on the verge of a street revolution. And we asked each other at Parliament, what is the use of this Parliament we are in? What is our role when the nation is in crisis? And we agreed we had a duty. We needed to sit down, come up with solutions that would save the nation from a street revolution. And that's when the IPPG was born. We came up with constitutional legal reforms, which I would say have defined this country.
It is in that Parliament that we eventually realized the need to dialogue, the need to talk to one another, and the need to take our country to a level of politics of sanity, competition without enmity, and competition for the good of the country. So we came together, both sides of the House, and we had far-reaching reforms at that time, the whittling down of the Chiefs Authority Act that was the nightmare.
The laws we amended, changed detention laws, abolished detention without trial, abolished the offense of sedition, which was really getting the media harassed. And we enlarged the democratic space by actually scraping the requirement that you must have a license to have a public meeting. And we introduced notification to the police that you have booked a certain venue on a certain day, just to avoid people clashing, because we recognize that the freedom of assembly is a fundamental right, and we obligated the police to provide security in meetings where they have been notified. And those, I believe, were landmark amendments among very many. We abolished the chief's authority under the chiefs by amendments to the Chief Authority Act. The chief could summon you and give you directions, just like in colonial days. All those were abolished. And that enabled to diffuse the